Hello everyone and welcome to our little studio on Televizija student. Today we have a really special guest who came here all the way from Germany, Dr. Peter Frey. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Very good. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. He was editor-in-chief of German public television, ZDF, and of course, journalist. So welcome to our little studio. How are you feeling today?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It's my second visit to Zagreb and I'm pleased to be here.
So basically, if I've understood correctly, you started from print, not from television journalism.
I started with radio.
Okay.
So this is where I'm coming from, and this is what I learned when I was quite young. So I had my first opportunity to work as a radio journalist in 1978. So that's many years ago, 44 years ago. And then I went to newspaper and to television in 81 or 82. So I started with radio. I know some about printing, and I worked my career in television, yes.
When it comes to print media, today we hear that print media is dying. Basically, there is a debate in our public system about the dying of print. So, what do you think? Is it really dying, or is there really a room for print to be alive?
I hope so. I mean, this morning I went to the main square in Zagreb and I was looking for an edition of the New York Times in print because I love to read print newspapers. I clip out certain articles and I make my notices, and so to be honest, I think we will not talk about where something is appearing and being published online or printed, but what is the content, and then there will be different means to play it out. So and I hope that print will survive, but I can see that it will be on a lower scale.
And since you were editor-in-chief of public service in Germany, how did this journey started for you when it comes to television journalism?
Well, I just had the opportunity to have an internship when I was very young. So as I told you, I started as a radio journalist, and after 3 or 4 years, being 24, 23, my feeling was that I know everything that you should know about radio, and I was looking for a fresh start of learning more, and then I just applied at ZDF. I studied in Mainz, and this is one of the curiosities of the German media system, that one of the largest public television stations is stationed in Mainz, a rather small city next to Frankfurt. But that gave me the opportunity, as I lived there, to work there and to move on and to learn. And well, I liked it and I stayed for more than 40 years.
And so you started very young, as
Yes.
I can tell.
I had the opportunity. You know, the whole system has not been so regulated as it is today. If you want to take a fresh start as a journalist today, you have to have a degree, an academic, a master or a bachelor or whatever it is, a PhD. I had the opportunity to study and work, to take the first steps in media, and I was very pleased about it. Yeah. I even did not finish my studies before becoming a real editor in ZDF. So they gave me the opportunity 2 years later to finish my university education, and then I passed on, and well, I think it was very lucky. And sometimes I think the not so regulated way is better than too much of regulation.
Yeah, so you mentioned this education process and you were kind of doing both at the same time. So today our students will be getting a copy of a handbook,
Yes.
Alphabet of Journalism.
Yes.
So what do you think, why is it, or do you even think, is it important to educate young journalists for better media?
I think so. The whole thing has become much more complicated than it was in my time, you know. When I became a journalist, there were only classical play-out medias like radio, television, print. Today we have online, today we have the social media. And it comes with a loss of the, how do you say, the regulations, the way you should do journalism, the basic. the basic knowledge about how journalism works. So I think it's very important to get some basic education about it.
And today you'll be also holding a presentation about public service. So why do you think why do you think it's important to keep public service in the center of our media, or do you even think it?
Yes, I think it's very important. I mean, look at the history of Germany. I mean, after the dictatorship of the Nazis in Germany and after the defeat of Germany in the Second World War, we needed a totally fresh start in media too. And so the Western allies decided to build up kind of a new system with a neutral instance of journalism in the center. So this is how ARD, the so-called first channel of German television, started. We came 10 years later in 1963. Then a whole landscape of radio, later online, developed. And I mean, if you compare, for example, the United States with a very polarized society today and a divided society between left and right, conservatives and progressives, this is also due of the lack of a media system in the center. So everybody lives in his own bubble, and my concept is that societies need kind of a impartial, non-partisan organization to give news, to tell the truth. I mean, I know that's a difficult category, but this is what I think our main duty is.
So since we already mentioned about how media today is rapidly changing and young journalists really need to balance between a lot of things. So for example, if you started today, do you think your career would be looking different, or would you be afraid of some things that are happening today in the media?
You know, as I said before, I think we should not come from the consideration of where do we play out, but what do we play out? So content is more important than platform. So, and if I have an interesting story, it does not make such a difference if it appears first on television or radio or Instagram or something like that. I'm sure that if I would have started today, or if I would start today, I would look at some Instagram channel and try to sell my things by this way. But this does not mean that the same content with the same background interviews, with the same people giving sound bites and appearing on screen could not also appear on a television screen.
And what about audience today? Do you think it differs from when you started?
Yes, because we know that especially the younger audience, let's say the people younger than 35, they are not concentrated and focused on television any longer. They want to be independent in their use of media. They want to watch the main evening news when they like to watch it. So everything goes back to video on demand. And of course, specific forms of online journalism are getting more and more important.
So what do you think, what is the future of journalism? Are we going to surpass some of these things that you mentioned? Or do you think this is kind of what we are staying at?
I think the main thing is that journalists focus on what the importance of their professional role is. And this is to transmit news impartially, with competence, with an own judgment, and independent of any political or economic powers in the background. It is not so important if I find an interesting story and if I do my research and if I write it down or put it on screen as we do now, where it is play out, as it said before. But we have to reach with what we are producing and finding out our audience on different platforms. I think that the future is that you do not work especially for television, but that you are prepared to produce different stages, different forms of the same story for different platforms.
So we're talking about the media convergation.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for being our guest. and hopefully you'll have a lovely stay here in Zagreb.
I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you for the opportunity.